RGB LED adds an additional element of flexibility into your customer's channel letter sign appearance. This type of LED illumination allows a channel letter sign to have a changing face color. However, the wiring procedure for RGB LED has some differences from standard LED, and this video reviews the procedure to wire a channel letter sign which is populated with RGB LED. It is also important to know that an RGB LED configuration requires more electrical components than a standard letter set. Driving this type of LED requires a power supply, a controller, and possibly an amplifier. You will also receive a hand remote. Your sign will be delivered with the LED modules populated. The sign wiring will need to be performed on your side prior to installation. In an RGB LED sign, the controller is the component that communicates the client's color illumination choice to the modules. The controller is supplied to you as a separate unmounted component. It is delivered unmounted because the optimal controller placement will vary from installation to installation. Here is another item to keep in mind. For an RGB LED installation, you will also need additional wiring for connecting the controller to the power supply and then for connecting the letters together. This wire is not supplied by DirectSign Wholesale. The amount of wiring required depends on the configuration and size of your letter set. So let's begin the wiring. Your first step is to connect the power supply to the controller. Take both the positive and negative wires from the transformer, strip them, and then connect both to the power input side of the controller. You've now completed wiring step number 1. The power supply is now connected to the controller. Your next step is to connect the first letter in the sign to the controller. After removing the face from the first letter, find the LED module that has wire nuts attached to the ends. Those wires will connect to the controller. Next, run a sufficient amount of wire to cover the distance from your controller location to the initial LED connection. Then strip all 4 wires so they can be connected inside the letter. Then remove the internal wire nuts so the wire ends are exposed. Again, strip all 4 wires. You can use a splice connector, wire nuts, crimp connects, or some other connector to connect the LED wires to the incoming ones. We used a wire nut connection here in our example. Be sure all of your connections are color matched. We're showing one wire nut connection here, but obviously all 4 wires will need to be connected. You then have your first internal wire connection complete. Your next step is to connect the exterior wiring to the controller. Remember, these wires are also color-coded. Make sure that each color-coded wire is matched to the corresponding color code on the controller. Strip your wires and make your connections. You've then completed this step. Your external wiring is connected to the controller. With the controller connected, your next step is to wire the next letter in the sign. Here is the procedure. Our example second letter is a small square logo box. Run your wires into the letter and connect the interior wires in the same manner as the first letter. Then strip the exterior wires and then cut and strip the wires running from the controller to the first letter. You will then have 3 separate sets of exposed wire ends. Connect each set of color-coded wires. Again, we used wire nut connections here in our example. You then have your second letter connected, which is in this case the small square logo box. Then connect the next letter in the sign. You would use the same connections, just place one more wire into each. One additional component may be necessary. As mentioned before, RGB LED could require the use of an amplifier depending on the total number of modules in the sign. The purpose of the amplifier is to ensure that the entire set of LED modules illuminate consistently with each other, both in color and brightness. So that is your initial RGB LED connection procedure. Contact us at DirectSign Wholesale for further information.